This is an essay in the series After the Walls Come Down, Building New Institutions from the Remains of a Broken World by William Young.
The American people have been given false promises about the value of schooling. The promised benefits are the provision of skilled workers to help the economy grow and become more productive, the creation of an educated citizenry, the equalization of opportunity for low-income people, and a lot more. All improvements in the quality of American life are attributed to schooling, while any deterioration in the quality of life is blamed on insufficient schooling. No matter what happens, the solution always seems to echo the advice of the Firesign Theater's Principal Poop, who wanted more schooling for more students at Moore Science High. Proving a cause and effect relationship between schooling and societal improvement is difficult. The 20th century featured large increases in the average level of educational attainment in the United States and other countries in the developed world. The increases in educational attainment were accompanied by significant increases in economic output and life expectancy. Yet the 20th century also saw more than 100 million people die from war and genocide, including in the two biggest wars in the history of humankind. It saw the introduction of nuclear weapons that could end all human life and many other life forms. Increased schooling has not stopped severe threats to climate, air, water, soil, biodiversity, oceans, and land-based habitats. The destruction of these things threatens to undo all the achieved material progress. Considering that widespread schooling has not prevented these problems, it is not clear why more schooling would be able to solve them. James S. Coleman wrote a 1972 article in Psychology Today entitled "The Children Have Outgrown the Schools," which contrasted American society in the 1970s with conditions in the 19th century. Coleman, a sociologist and education researcher who died in 1995, said that during the 1800s, young people obtained much of their information from direct experience, and most were integrated into the economic life of their community. Neither radio nor television had yet been invented, and books were scarce for many students. Schools played the important role of exposing young people to vicarious experiences, information beyond what could be learned from direct experiences. The 19th century schools operated in a society in which the ratio of vicarious experiences to direct experiences was low for most students. By the 1970s, the situation was reversed. Most young people were not integrated into the economic life of their community, but they were exposed to a broad range of vicarious experiences from television, radio, books, magazines, and other sources. The ratio of vicarious experiences to direct experiences was very high, yet schools had not adapted to the dramatic changes. They were structured the same as in the 1800s. Coleman said that in the information-poor society of the 19th century, schools had little competition when trying to shape the values of young people. By the 20th century, the flood of outside information to which students were exposed prevented schools from effectively shaping values. Since Coleman wrote the article, the gap between vicarious and direct experiences has widened significantly. Vicarious sources, such as the internet and social media, have assumed a huge role in shaping the values of young people as the influence of families and schools has waned. Learning to obey the rules that must be followed in authoritarian school environments is usually a more important lesson than the content of courses. Some people manage to thrive despite the school structures and rules, but many who have the potential to make important contributions to society often lose the initiative to think and act independently. For many students, schools remove joy from learning and deaden natural curiosity. In his book Deschooling Society, Ivan Illich wrote that one of the worst aspects of schools is that they teach people the need to be taught and do not encourage people to learn on their own. Schools in the United States and many other parts of the world reflect the negative belief that people hate to learn and will not learn reading, writing, arithmetic, or anything else unless coerced. Schools in the United States are failing to help an inordinate number of students to learn reading skills after 10 or 12 years of coercion. More than 20% of adult Americans are illiterate, and more than 50% read at below a 6th grade level. A similar situation exists with arithmetic. About 30% of Americans have trouble with basic number skills after leaving school. Both the literacy problems and the deep dislike for learning fostered by schools have ominous political implications. As the world becomes increasingly complex, not nearly enough people beyond school age make a significant effort to understand how their government and society function. The chances of such people being active and intelligent participants in a viable democracy are remote. If more than half the population has 6th grade literacy skills or less, they are not likely to understand complicated political ideas and are more likely to believe what is on a bumper sticker or in a campaign slogan. Opportunistic politicians, especially those with fascist leanings, regularly exploit this ignorance. School officials and politicians do not want to confront the failures of the current system. They propose solutions that involve more coercion, which makes the situation worse. Coercion and control are at the heart of the American elementary and secondary school systems. In some schools, drugs such as Ritalin are used to try to control the real or imagined hyperactive behavior by millions of students who have trouble functioning in conventional school environments. In 23 states, corporal punishment is either allowed or has not been banned in public schools. If young people choose not to attend school without first receiving permission from school officials, their cases might be sent to a district attorney's office for violation of truancy laws. The parents or guardians of such students might also be prosecuted, fined, and possibly jailed. For many students, school walls feel like prison walls, and the prisoners are impatient to escape. Curriculum content is a controversial political issue in many communities, especially for issues such as evolution and sex education. These controversies stem from the one-size-fits-all mentality in school systems. People argue ahead of time what information should be force-fed to all students and what information should be withheld. Depending on the locality, schools can be racist or racially tolerant, creationist or evolutionist, conservative or liberal, religious or secular, prudish or sexually frank, etc. Even though the extremists do not always prevail on curriculum matters, the debates have led to intellectually arid textbooks written to offend as few local school systems as possible. Mark Twain once said that if a cat sits on a hot stove, it will never sit on a hot stove again, but it probably will not sit on a cold one either. Something similar is happening when students associate books with textbooks. Everyone should be entitled to a fair share of education resources and should have convenient access to learning tools throughout their lives. This is not merely an equity issue. The learning system must be able to accommodate the needs of people, both young and old, who live in a society that continues to change at an ever-increasing pace. American schools are being pulled in many directions. They are used as a certification system by employers. At the elementary and secondary levels, they are used as daycare centers for parents who work. Colleges and universities perform just about any service the government and big business will pay for. High schools, colleges, and universities provide entertainment through football, basketball, and other sports. While all of these functions might be in demand, educational institutions should not be responsible for providing them. Current ideas about schooling are now so deeply ingrained in the public consciousness that most people have trouble imagining how any other learning system could work. A reform system of American education should be based on the following principles. It should be non-coercive, consisting of institutions whose services people use voluntarily. It should provide easy access for people of all ages. It should be structured to benefit learners. It should be free or easily affordable, with nobody turned away for lack of means. It should provide opportunities for young people to observe different professions to help them determine what field of work to enter. It should be coordinated with a national daycare system which would provide services free or at low cost. It should cultivate a thirst for knowledge and an enjoyment of learning. It should permit users to access resources from institutions throughout the world. It should offer special attention to learners in at-risk groups. In his book, The Idea of University, the 19th century Catholic Cardinal John Henry Newman suggested that it is better for a person with an active and thoughtful intellect, quote, to eschew the college and university altogether than to submit to a drudgery so ignoble, a mockery so contumelious, unquote. Contumelious means humiliating. He thought it would be much more profitable for an independent mind, quote, to range through a library at random, taking down books as they meet him and pursuing the trains of thought which his mother wit suggests, unquote. Cardinal Newman was onto something. The most important direction for school reform should be to model learning institutions at all levels on the principles of public libraries. The idea was suggested by John Holt in his book Freedom and Beyond. Holt said that when people approach some schools to learn about a particular subject, they often will not be allowed to take a course until they answer certain questions. Where are your prerequisites? How do we know you are good enough to learn here? What previous schooling have you had? Not what have you done, what do you know? Where are your transcripts, your diplomas? Are you a candidate for a degree? Which one? Holt said that nobody's right to learn should depend on first being able to pass some test. He said it is fair that anyone who wants to drive a car must first pass a driving test, but it is not fair or sensible to require a test before a person can try to learn to drive. Nobody is rewarded for using a library or punished for not using it. People do not have to prove any ability to use a library's resources, and the benefits from using the resources depend on the initiative of the users. They can learn as much or as little as they desire, all at their own pace, and they are not evaluated afterwards by the library. They can access a library's resources online or borrow resources and use them at home. The only limitation is that other people might want to use the resources. All people do not learn at the same pace or with the same proficiency. Most students currently need to move at the pace of their classroom. For those who already know the material, the pace is too slow. For those who do not know or care about the material, the pace is too fast. In a library-like system, students could have access to resources, tools, and guidance to allow them to learn a much greater amount more quickly than they can in current schools where everyone must move at the same pace. In a library-like system, people would choose an educational resource based on their skill level rather than on their age or grade level. Some people learn to read before reaching first grade, so such people do not need to sit through introductory first grade reading classes. Conversely, a 40-year-old who has not learned to read might need introductory reading resources. The current system does not allow the 40-year-old to sit in a first grade classroom, and even if it did, the 40-year-old most likely would be ashamed to do so. A caring system would provide resources so that people of any age who want to learn to read or learn about anything else could proceed at their own pace while having easy access to appropriate resources. Teachers could provide remedial services and personal assistance for anyone who needs help. A library-like system would serve the needs of both specialists and generalists. Some people have eclectic interests and enjoy studying a variety of subjects. Others might prefer to stick with one subject. Some specialists might like to spend most of their time studying a particular subject, but occasionally take a break by learning about something unrelated. The intensity with which anyone pursues learning should be determined by the learner's interests and intellectual stamina, not by school administrators. The British writer C. Northcote Parkinson is known for his series of laws about human and organizational behavior, the most famous of which is work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. This law applies to many students who are forced to study subjects in which they have no interest. For such subjects, students who must write a paper due in a week are more likely to finish it the night before it is due rather than spending the same amount of time on it at the beginning of the week. A corollary to Parkinson's law might be that when confronted with a list of tasks, many people prefer to do the least unpleasant one first and save the most unpleasant one until it absolutely must be done. This means that students might spend the least time on subjects for which they have the greatest interest and the most time agonizing over subjects they like the least. People deeply interested in a subject might immerse themselves in it for hours, which will seem to pass like minutes. For people who have no interest in a subject, the minutes they are forced to sit in a classroom might seem like hours. They might view every class with a similar lack of enthusiasm. Developing a deep interest in a subject often inspires learners to explore other fields. For instance, people interested in birds might be inspired to learn about biology, botany, and other sciences. They might study environmental issues that affect bird populations. They might learn about other parts of the country and the world where certain bird species are located. They might become interested in the origin of bird names. They might delve into bird references in literature and music. For countless other areas of interest, one also can find a long list of linkages to external fields of study. People who explore these external fields because of a link to their favorite subject are more likely to retain what they learned than if they are forced to study the same field with no linkage. People are usually not asked 10 years after leaving school to answer examination questions from their disparate subjects. The results would be embarrassing for both the students and schools. A library-like system would encourage greater intellectual exploration. Sampling a subject would not entail enrolling in a course for a semester. After having a taste of the subject by talking to a teacher, attending a learning session, or using other educational resources, a learner could determine whether to pursue it further. The British writer Frank Muir said that anything worth doing is worth doing badly. He believed that if you really enjoyed doing something, you should not be inhibited if you are not adept at it. This concept cannot be followed if students fear they will receive low grades in a subject they enjoy but are not proficient in. Likewise, if students enroll in programs they later decide they do not like, they should be able to withdraw without the stigma of failing or dropping out. Other people in the learning sessions would prefer that such students leave rather than hanging around while uninterested. People should be able to access learning resources for elementary school programs through the graduate school level. They should be able to move freely among educational institutions without the bureaucratic hassle of transferring. Electronic media should be accessible through a global system so information sources can be equally available to people in Portland, Oregon and Portland, Maine, or to people in Birmingham, Alabama and Birmingham, England. Widely accessible electronic resources would make learning easier for people who are ill, transient, living in remote locations, or who want to do homeschooling. The conversion to a library-like system should be done in conjunction with the provision of free or affordable daycare for anyone up to 18 years old. Many families now are put under financial stress when forced to pay for childcare. A lot of mental stress is involved in trying to juggle work with childcare, especially for single-parent households. The cost and difficulties connected with daycare might be one reason the American birth rate is falling. A primary purpose of the daycare system should be to refer young people to educational resources in a library-like system. Teachers should find out the interests of individuals and steer them toward resources which will help them to learn. Students might also become interested in subjects that other people are studying. In centers with a mixed age range, older students excited about learning might adopt younger students and help them to learn. A daycare system should operate in conjunction with the library-like system, but should be separate from it. The two systems should be physically close enough so that young people can easily shift from one to the other. Young people who are not ready or inclined to use the education resources should be able to participate in other daycare activities, such as games and athletics, while keeping out of the way of people interested in learning. Those using the education resources should be able to go to the daycare center if they want to take a break. A library-like system should offer classes in how to cook, sew, and other skills needed around the home. More than a quarter of U.S. households are comprised of a single person, with about half male and half female. Traditionally, such home economics courses were offered only to women, but men need to know these skills also. People need to know how to do home maintenance, develop a household budget, balance a checking account, maintain a car, avoid consumer scams, and other basic skills. They should be able to learn about the sources of their food, housing, clothing, transportation, medical care, and other essential aspects of their lives. And programs should be made available about what governments do and the responsibilities of people living in a democracy. A reformed education system would have resources for both academic and non-academic subjects. People would be able to learn about construction trades, professional trades, or any other skill or field of study. John Gardner, the former U.S. Secretary of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, which became the Department of Health and Human Services, wrote in his book Excellence, quote, "An excellent plumber is infinitely more admirable than an incompetent philosopher. The society which scorns excellence in plumbing because plumbing is a humble activity and tolerates shoddiness in philosophy because it is an exalted activity will have neither good plumbing nor good philosophy. Neither its pipes nor its theories will hold water." Unquote. People in the work world could be a part of the educational system if current employers would open their doors to people who want to learn. A system of payments could be worked out for business people willing to accept students trying to determine how they might want to earn a living. Apprenticeships or stints with employers might inspire people to return to their studies to learn more about what they need to know about a particular job. The current school system forces many students to do the learning first and then see if they enjoy doing it as a job, which is backwards, expensive, and can cause people to prepare for work they end up not liking. The United States passed child labor laws to criminalize the exploitation of young people by employers. Exploited child labor still exists in the U.S., and lawmakers would need to try to prevent exploitation problems when amending laws to allow young people to work in certain types of jobs. A library-like system would allow people of all ages and levels of experience to exchange ideas and knowledge. Young people could mix with employed middle-aged people and retired people. Such mingling could be beneficial to young people trying to decide what direction to take in life. They are more likely to make better career decisions if they can freely mix with people in the work world. And older people who mix with young people might be able to significantly enhance their computer skills. Many young people, regardless of household income, come from troubled homes, have mental or physical problems, and/or have learning disabilities. About a quarter of people under 18 live in households with either a single parent or with relatives. About 1 of every 6 Americans under the age of 18 lives in poverty. Many children in America are sent to school hungry and cold. About 7% of students have a parent in prison. Even a reformed learning system cannot solve these problems. Teachers who have prepared for their occupation by studying teaching methods and subject areas often find that when they get into a classroom, the overriding concern is trying to maintain order among unruly young people who do not want to be there. Teachers also become frustrated because they typically are not interested in doing remedial teaching. They are not prepared to deal with the failures of the school system when students were at a lower grade level. Teachers are often forced to deal with many situations that would be better handled by social workers. The current school system allows far too many young people to fall through the cracks. The learning system should give a high priority to helping these young people. Some young people are highly motivated and enter school with a head start from a positive home environment. Others come from homes where learning is not valued. A reformed learning system would devote significant resources to ensure that as many children as possible get off to a good start with learning. America now is spending a much larger amount per pupil at the college level than at the elementary school level. The education establishment should take a lot of the money it spends on legal adults and use it to provide greater attention to helping young children, especially those living in poverty. The convenience and accessibility of the system would be enhanced if it offered a full range of learning services year-round rather than for only 9 or 10 months a year, as is typical for current schools. The current school calendar was developed when the economy of the United States was primarily agrarian and young people had to do farm work during the summer growing season. Most school schedules have never adjusted to the reality that our society is no longer primarily agrarian. While schools cling to practices from the pre-electronic era, the rest of society uses technology to make products and services available 24/7. Electronic banking can be done at any hour of the day or night. American shoppers now have 24/7 electronic access to offerings from throughout the United States and the world. Many shoppers still enjoy going to stores and browsing. Others know exactly what they want and search for it online, which saves them the effort of visiting stores. Rather than reducing the demand for products, electronic technology is allowing vendors to sell to a much broader clientele than if they relied entirely on walk-in customers. People often buy from merchants in places they have never visited and never will. Similar options are needed in the learning system. Most of today's schools announce when and where they will offer courses, and students are required to be in the correct place at the correct time. Accessing learning resources should be easily accomplished through means other than going to a classroom. Societies that value learning do not keep it locked away in schools. In general, public libraries have been substantially more progressive than schools in adopting new technologies to provide better service and greater convenience for users. Librarians also have done a much better job than school administrators in understanding the concept of service and treating learners with respect rather than as people who need to be controlled. Using libraries as the primary model for educational institutions would not mean that everyone would be a solitary learner and that all classrooms would be replaced by shelves of learning material. Many people would still prefer to do most of their learning in communal learning centers. A goal of a library-like system would be to link learners with the tools and learning styles that suit them best, and connecting learners with others who want to pursue similar subjects. The system would offer a broad range of classes, seminars, discussion groups, and other opportunities for learners to interact with both teachers and each other. Museums, performing arts centers, and educational institutions throughout the world should be asked to participate, along with any groups or individuals who could make a meaningful contribution. Teachers would be freed from the task of conveying information that could be offered more effectively through other media, and they also would be freed from bureaucratic burdens such as grading and taking attendance. The freedom to learn fostered in a library-like system might be difficult for many students to handle. Some people have been pushed around for so long that they no longer have the will to take charge of their own learning. A system that encourages greater self-reliance and independence on the part of learners would still offer a structured learning environment for those who want it. A failure of some education experiments in the 1960s and 1970s was to assume that all students could thrive in learning environments with significantly reduced guidance and structure. Such experiments were an overreaction to the highly regimented classrooms that were common then and remain common now. A learning system can have structure without being rigid and coercive. Many writers who do research adopt a highly structured and disciplined approach to their work without coercion, such as me researching and writing these essays. An important role for teachers in a non-coercive learning system would be to help students develop self-discipline and to offer guidelines for how to study and learn. Such guidelines would form an important part of the structure for subsequent learning efforts, regardless of the subject. People in a library-like system could learn as teams and be grouped according to common interests and existing knowledge. Someone who has trouble grasping a particular concept could be helped by a teacher or other learners. Currently, most schools encourage competition among learners at the expense of concern for the welfare of the group, with students struggling against each other to achieve the highest grades. A healthier learning environment would encourage people to work together to ensure that everyone masters all of the concepts in a course of study. Mixing with other students with similar interests can lead to a sharing of ideas and recommendations of new intellectual areas to pursue. Learners who work well together might choose to stay together for other intellectual explorations. Teachers could work with groups of students to facilitate an exchange of ideas and help anyone having trouble understanding a lesson. Whenever possible, learners should be encouraged to read primary sources. For instance, the works of Darwin instead of someone's interpretation of the works of Darwin. Inquisitive learners could ask their teachers and other students for suggestions about the direction for future studies. Young people who help others at a lower level might be inspired to choose teaching as a profession. A model for some types of learning might be Swedish study circles. More than 1.5 million Swedish adults in a country with 10.5 million people now participate in study circles each year. That translates to about 1 out of every 7 Swedes. If the U.S. had a study circle system with similar participation rates, more than 48 million Americans would be involved. Participants in Swedish study circles discuss a broad range of subjects that often include social issues. Some groups are sponsored by the government, while others are sponsored by churches, businesses, unions, and other types of organizations. A study circle consists of up to 20 people. Some are much smaller. Each meeting of the circle lasts up to a few hours, and the circle meets 3 to 6 times. The circles encourage dialogue among all the participants. Before each meeting, participants are usually told what reading material will be the basis for discussion. Typically, an organizer or facilitator is in each group, but this person does not teach the group. The basic requirements for study circles are a space, a facilitator, and a group of interested people. Some government money now being spent on schools in the United States could be redirected to organize and promote study circles. The circles also could be organized privately. They could be especially helpful for young people trying to determine their intellectual interests as well as what path to pursue in life. Because study circles involve interactions among people with similar interests, they provide an excellent opportunity for people to meet others, form friendships, and in the case of young people, find mentors and possibly partners. In the United States, Book clubs and reading groups are popular. These gatherings bring together people who have read the same book. They are different from study circles in that they usually involve only one session rather than multiple sessions and examine one book rather than multiple sources. A library-like system should include a clearinghouse through which members of the community can exchange skills. In some communities in the 1960s and 1970s, entities called free universities allowed people with expertise in particular subjects to connect with people interested in learning about the subjects. The courses dealt with job skills, hobbies, academic subjects, and other areas of interest. Free universities operated informally without grades and credits. Students sometimes paid a nominal fee to cover expenses. In the United States during the second half of the 20th century, there was a substantial growth in low-tuition, non-residential community colleges. These institutions enroll full-time students, part-time students, and students who are older than typical college age. Some community colleges have a primarily vocational orientation, with students seeking to learn specific skills for jobs or trying to amass a suitable number of credits to earn degrees that would make them eligible for better paying jobs. Some students use community college attendance as a stepping stone to later enrollment in a university. Community colleges are able to shift their offerings more quickly than larger schools that have established departments with tenured professors. They offer courses with fewer prerequisites than many other types of schools, and they could be adapted to a library-like system of learning were they to eliminate entrance requirements, course units, grades, and other bureaucratic baggage. Many teachers, especially in higher education institutions, might resist the expanded use of electronic media for instruction because they would be afraid that only a small number of top instructors would be presenting most of the information, causing the rest to either lose their jobs or work in less glamorous activities. Under the current system, professors and teachers are the stars in their own classrooms. Many would have to adapt to a new system where their interpersonal skills would become much more important. Teachers also might worry that their jobs might be in jeopardy if not protected by curriculum requirements that force students to take certain types of courses in order to obtain a degree. If learners were allowed to determine what subjects are in demand, many narrow specialists might find themselves with few learners to help. Some people might raise the legitimate concern about young people spending too much time alone with electronic media rather than in groups of other students. Such solitary behavior is occurring without a reformulation of the learning system. While young people should be encouraged to live balanced lives with ample outdoor recreation, even the most utopian school reformers should concede that the battle over keeping young people from spending inordinate amounts of time looking at screens has been lost. However, the spread of electronic instruction might redirect some screen time to more productive uses. Likewise, audio courses could make mobile phone time more productive. Computers, books, and mobile phones are all communications media. Being alone while reading a book is similar to being alone while learning from a computer or other electronic device. If young people choose to spend a lot of their free time viewing electronic instructional material, they will be better off than they are now when playing video games and watching violence, pornography, and commercials. The United States has about 6,000 institutions of higher learning, and these schools could help to produce courses at all levels from elementary to graduate school. The efforts should be cooperative in order to promote the greatest diversity of offerings. Citizens of all ages could have access at any time to almost any type of course taught by the best teachers. This would allow interested learners to be able to easily afford education and not be saddled with the long-term debts that many people now have after finishing college. The system also must avoid the creation of a societal division between learning haves and have-nots. ensuring that all segments of society have the necessary tools to access the resources. A reform system must include a major effort to ensure that people have at least basic skills in reading and arithmetic. Young people have an incentive to learn to read, if for no other reason than to be able to send text messages to friends. You can get only so far using emojis. People usually need to pass a written test to receive a driver's license, and most people want to be able to drive. People could be given a reading test to show they are literate. They could regard it as a hurdle similar to a driver's test, and it simply could be an obstacle to pass on the road to adulthood. People could take the test as many times as necessary with no penalties for failing. A similar test could be devised for basic arithmetic. People need knowledge about numbers in order to function in a modern consumer society. They do not need to know algebra, geometry, or trigonometry, but they need to know addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, fractions, and decimals. As with reading, a simple arithmetic test could be another obstacle for people to pass. People could take it as many times as necessary with no penalties. A lot of people could probably pass both tests before reaching age 10. Others might take longer. Many young people are now writing with keyboards and phone screens rather than pen and paper. Not only are people losing the ability to do handwriting, but many also cannot read it. As the world becomes more digitized, losing the ability to do handwriting is not as serious as not being able to read or do basic arithmetic. People who feel the need to learn to write could certainly do so. In a library-like system, students would focus mostly on what they are learning rather than forming an allegiance with the institution through which the learning occurs. The modern concept of school spirit would disappear because libraries do not have athletic teams, marching bands, and fight songs. The test for the inclusion of any activity should be the appropriateness for a public library, study group, daycare facility, or local activity center to sponsor it. If people want to play soccer, basketball, or any other sport, it could be provided by a daycare facility or activity center. Any athlete who wants to go beyond this level could try to play for a competitive team sponsored by a local or professional sports organization, but it would not be part of the education system. The United States is the only country in the world whose colleges and universities sponsor big-time athletics. A lot of high school athletic programs also are excessively large. Originally, sports in American schools were a way for students to exercise and let off steam. School sports have morphed into a multi-billion-dollar industry where recruits are sought from around the world for their athletic prowess. In a country where 40% of adults are obese, many students on college campuses have been converted from athletic participants into athletic spectators. Some people argue that big-time sports is a large source of revenue for schools. Only a small number of sports programs earn money for their colleges and universities. Most operate at a deficit, draining money from school budgets. Money should be redirected from sports into legitimate learning activities. If communities such as Lincoln, Nebraska, or Ann Arbor, Michigan are interested in football, institutions such as the University of Nebraska or the University of Michigan should not provide it. The professional sports establishment is more than capable of organizing and financing such activities. School administrators and the corporations that sell billions of dollars worth of textbooks might argue that a library-like system based on freedom of choice would reinforce the existing beliefs of learners rather than exposing them to a range of ideas beyond what they already believe. Anyone who observes American politics in the 21st century cannot suggest with a straight face that current American school curricula are producing a non-polarized society filled with open-minded people. A library-like system would allow those who hold minority views to learn in a less hostile environment. Such a system would allay the concerns of many religious people who currently homeschool their children to shield them from the values and people in public schools. It would allay the concerns of pacifists who do not approve of institutions that permit military recruiters, and it would allay the concerns of atheists and anti-nationalists who do not like institutions that compel students to pledge allegiance to the flag and/or a deity. An obvious question is, how would a library-like system be paid for? The United States currently spends more than $1 trillion a year on schooling, comparable to what is spent on national defense. Unlike many other parts of American society that need reform, reforming school systems could be done mostly with existing infrastructure and resources. The money used to pay for huge layers of school bureaucracy could be repurposed to better suit the needs of all people, from those less than a year old to those who are more than 100. Despite all the money now being spent, many school systems are chronically short of funds. Common options for confronting shortfalls are to cut staff, reduce services, increase class sizes, and/or purchase fewer learning resources, all of which degrade school experiences for those who are forced to attend. I know of many teachers who reach into their own pockets to buy school supplies for their students. Free market types have tried numerous ploys to tap into money devoted to public schools, including school vouchers, charter schools, and the latest craze of states providing empowerment scholarship accounts, which people use to pay for activities at private or parochial schools. All of these schemes focus on subsidizing individual students rather than creating a learning system that everyone can use. At the college level, the practice of providing a supervised and self-contained learning, social, and residential environment for large numbers of young people has become extremely expensive. The cost is mostly passed on to students, many of whom are saddled with college debt for a couple of decades. The concept of efficiency in education is not the same as it is in the business world. Students are not widgets, and efficiency cannot be achieved by trying to produce the same or greater output with reduced inputs. Educational institutions could become more efficient by allowing teachers to devote more time to personalized instruction rather than wasting time parroting information from textbooks. Electronic media might outperform teachers in transmitting information, but might be less effective in helping students to apply information. If freed from the responsibilities of presenting information, teachers could spend more time helping students with application. Many teachers could assume a role similar to a reference librarian, telling students what learning resources are available and how to access them. Others could work directly with students by commenting on their work and helping them to understand difficult concepts. Electronic media are like interactive textbooks, allowing students to learn at their own pace and to replay information they do not absorb on the first attempt. These media also have the capability to quiz students and provide some types of feedback. The cost of conveying information electronically is small compared to the cost of paying salaries and benefits for teachers. With teachers, the upfront training cost is expensive, as is their use to disseminate information to students. With online resources, upfront hardware and production costs can be expensive, after which the cost to reproduce and disseminate information is usually small. Video and audio media do not allow interaction between students and teachers, but they share the advantage of providing information on demand. Audio media, while not having visual images, have the advantage of not requiring the undivided attention of the learner. People can learn from audio presentations while performing other tasks, such as walking, driving, bathing, exercising, cooking, cleaning, and in some circumstances, while at one's job. Schools have developed a considerable infrastructure for controlling students. If schools were structured more like libraries, the people who should worry most about losing their jobs are administrators, because many administrative jobs would become unnecessary. Henceforth, administrators would be hired to provide services to people over whom they have no authority and who are under no compulsion to use the services. The word administrator comes from the Latin administrare, which means to help or give service to. The min part of administrator denotes something lesser or smaller, as in minor or minus. Administrators should be the lesser members of the learning system, serving rather than controlling. They should work behind the scenes to ensure that students and teachers have the resources necessary for learning to flourish. Everything needed to reform the learning system in the United States is already being done in one form or another. Courses and individual classes are available online. Many adults are involved in continuing education programs. Some libraries, in spite of significant funding shortfalls, are dramatically expanding the electronic resources available to patrons. But these developments have not become strong enough to topple the most common paradigm for American schooling. People of all ages should have a spirit similar to what many medieval students had while pursuing learning. Most did not learn in specific institutions in fixed locations. They were not seeking to earn degrees, but rather wandered widely to pursue knowledge wherever it might be found. Learning is something an individual does rather than something that is done to an individual. The failure to understand this fundamental idea is responsible for many of the failings of modern schools. Learners should never leave educational institutions feeling no more pencils, no more books, no more teachers' dirty looks. Humans have been involved with learning since long before schools appeared. Modern educational institutions need to tear down their existing walls and provide a free and open environment where people can learn what is necessary to be citizens in a free and open society.